Hello, it's section 4.1. It's not on the screen, but it should be. Section 4.1, the theory of absolutism. So, absolutism, start that over. The theory of absolutism. What does that word mean? It's a great question, as I'm sitting here alone in the room, talking to nobody in particular. Well, looky here. Here's someone, a friend that perhaps we can speak to in this section. His name is Louis the 14th, and he's going to be a big part of this unit. He's going to stand right here through this whole thing and listen to me talk about absolutism. So, first of all, what is this all about? Well, first of all, absolutism in the lens of the Treaty of Westphalia. We'll talk about that, characteristics of absolutism, the differences between Western and Eastern absolutism, and then also the alternatives to absolutism in government, which is going to be a big part of this section. So before we get to whatever absolutism is, let's talk about what we have come from, and that's the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, ending the 30 Years' War. Why is this critical for us going forward? Well, first of all, the Treaty of Westphalia established, if not directly, then indirectly, that the state is more important in politics, in the realm of political power, than the church. That the actual government will have more say in making laws and dictating how society works than the church. And that seems for us in 20, whatever it is that you're listening to this, whatever year, it seems something that is so like, duh. I mean, the government makes the laws. But again, we've seen the church had so much political power previous to the 30 Years' War. So this treaty establishes that going forward. And we saw that in practice with the German states getting the rights to levy taxes, craft foreign policy, conduct wars, etc., rather than the church having to say so, or the Holy Roman Emperor, or anyone of that nature. Okay, now, this treaty diminished the motivation for fighting over religious faith. We established after this treaty, all wars are going to be fought due to the balance of power, whether that being keeping a strong country in check, whether that be finding resources to gather for the mercantilist economy, which is the rules that everybody's playing for or playing by. That is going to be the driving motivation, is to keep that balance of power so that you're not too low and your neighbor or enemy or friend, whatever, is not too high in power and influence. By 1648, we have got a position in a situation where France is the most powerful political country. The Netherlands also is in there, economically speaking. Spain is there, but on the way down, and we're going to talk about that next section in 4.2. So again, the government is being set up as the political body. The government, the nation state, a national government led by these new monarchs which have grabbed and increased power. So that's where we are. Now, we're going to split this section mostly between Western absolutism and Eastern absolutism. We'll see this kind of develop in the course of the unit. So the West, everything over here, Western Europe, primarily France, Spain, England, the Netherlands. That's really what we say with West. Eastern Europe, Poland, the Ottoman Empire, Russia. Central Europe, right here on the line, the German states, and then also the Italian states. We can kind of put in Central Europe. So that's where we're kind of splitting the line up a little bit. But we're going to focus most of our efforts with absolutism on Western Europe. So the question is, what's been happening there over the last century? And a big part of it has been the religious wars. And this guy, Philip II, who always ruled by religious consideration. The Catholic faith dictated kind of what he did as king. But as time goes on and as we get into the 1600s, the 17th century, we're going to see more kings that are playing for power. And whatever they need to do that, to help the power of their national government, they're going to do, including this guy named Louis the 14th. Ooh, I see you. I see you there. Looking pretty. Looking pretty. Okay. Now, what is absolutism? I've used that term, like, what does it mean? We're going to start seeing governments in which the king and queen have absolute power. And they rule by a concept named and called divine right, which states that the king or queen has been given the right to rule by God, that the king can do whatever he wants because God's wish and will is that that king is in charge. Now, we talked about how religious influence is going down, but yet it's still used as justification for the fact that the king or queen can do whatever they please and whatever they want. So, absolute power in government. But this doesn't mean that they have full power in society. Okay, imagine a world with no internet, no phones, no TV, no means of direct communication outside of putting. Miss Turner's here. Hey, we're just talking about absolutism.
Oh yeah,
it's very exciting. Miss Turner is here.
Hello. Who is this?
Well, this is the Padeo 4.1. We're for AP European History.
Awesome. Hello.
I know it's
Absolutism.
exciting times.
Kings.
So you looking for that stuff there? Okay, and we had our special guest here. We have Louis the 14th.
Oh, Louis the
here.
14th.
Yes,
Sun King.
the Sun King himself
He was
is here.
Pretty amazing.
He was, as 4.2 will show us here very soon. It is that way. So you're looking for that? Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So again, total control in society. In a world where you have no direct lines of communication, it's hard for you to hold people accountable on the other side of the country. So, yes, control of government, but I can't control someone's actions, say, across the country as easily as maybe I can today with television surveillance and social media and all these aspects which put checks on our society. So we'll talk about that aspect a little more in the future. All right, hey, I took a break. You didn't even know. So, absolutism. How is it different from Western Europe to Eastern Europe? Well, in the West, the ruler is the government. Like, our government today in the United States is not one man. It's not one woman. But at this point of history, the government is the king. The king is the government. I mean, there's no split. The nobility is totally controlled. They are neutered. That's a word. Their political power is totally gone. The bureaucracies, the middle class, are managing government affairs. We saw this new monarch. So these absolute kings in Western Europe and queens in Western Europe are like the descendants of the new monarchs. So the bureaucrats, the middle class, are managing the affairs of government to make sure that the ruler's will is done. You have large standing armies, so you're going to get your butt kicked. Divine right is extremely common. Spain, France, England is different, and we'll talk about why. The Netherlands is a little different. We'll talk about why. But when we're talking Western absolutism, France, Spain, Portugal, all these places really follow divine right. Now, in the East, this is very different because the nobility is much stronger in the East, and they have a lot more local control, and there's actually an agreement between the nobility and the monarch. The monarchs get the right to rule the country, so they get access to the army, they get access to the perks, to the crown, all this fun stuff. They get little action figures made of them. I mean, it's great. But, Louis, stand up. A little too much to, did you have too many beverages? How many times? All right, so anyway, the monarchs get the right to rule the country, but the nobility gets the right to treat their subjects on their local plantations or their lands however they want. So the monarchs basically have no local control, and the nobles do. And divine right is not respected because everything is built off this agreement that, hey, the monarchs can rule if they don't come in and kind of mess with the nobles' local control. The nobles will do what the monarch says. This is very feudal. This is very Middle Ages. So the changes that we have studied so far this year have really taken place in Western Europe and not Eastern Europe. And you still see Eastern Europe very feudal, very Middle Ages in their political power and how it's set up. Also, guess what? In the East, not much of a middle class either. So Western Europe, impacted by the Renaissance, impacted by the Reformation, impacted by exploration especially, those three movements have shifted the way powers are working in Western Europe. Eastern Europe, you don't see it yet. Now, in Eastern Europe, it sucks to be at the lower class because we're dealing with a serf here, and it's a peasant who's tied to working a specific piece of land for a noble. A lot of peasants, they have basically freedom. They can move to wherever they want, work the land wherever is best for them. Serfs do not have that ability because in these local environments, very feudal, they are protected by the noble. However, they have to produce goods for the noble. And the nobles have complete control over serfs in Poland, Russia, and this state called Prussia, which we'll talk about soon, by the mid-1600s. And you have this sense, as we talked about, of estate agriculture, a very feudal system where you've got the nobles have all this land growing all this food. And the reason why it's so successful is that in Western Europe, the population is going up. Little Ice Age is gone, population's going up, and they need food. You know, the best place to plant crops in Europe, many say, is in Poland. It's in Eastern Europe. It's very arable land. And when they get those new crops like corn and potatoes and things, and they take those, put them in the ground, wheat, a very old school or an old world crop, and you can grow a lot of resources. And those resources then are sent to Western Europe and sold for a profit. And the nobles can make a lot of money. And you need more serfs and more people to work the land. So it is a very much a top-down economic model where the nobles drive the bus and the peasants are basically connected along for the ride. And a lot of that, as I just told you, is set up because Western Europe needs stuff, because that economy is becoming more and more successful and the population is going up as well. Now, before we end, another interpretation, another way to think about absolutism. It's this model I call will of the people. It's that the people have given you, the king, the ability to rule on their behalf. So the people sign what's called, signing in air quotes, what's called a social contract with the ruler, in which people give up some rights. They can't do whatever they want because of the nature of law. However, the monarch provides protection for the people. And this is illustrated in a book by a man named Thomas Hobbes. He wrote the book Leviathan. Leviathan is another word for a sea monster, which maybe this can kind of connect to this. I don't know. You'll have to figure that out. But in any case, Thomas Hobbes writes that people are terrible. You are a piece of crap. That's what Thomas Hobbes says. I didn't say that. Thomas Hobbes said it. You are a piece of crap. And we need protection from one another. Otherwise, we're going to punch each other in the face, and there we go. It's going to be bad news. So we need law and order. And that's where the monarch comes in. This isn't a divine right thing. It's the people saying, King, we're going to let you rule for us and protect us because we have to be protected from ourselves. Now, this is interesting because this cover of Leviathan, in which you depict the absolute monarch, look at what's making up his power and his size, right? I mean, he's a big old dude, but look what's making him up. Those look like little people. So without the people's support, the king is not even there. He is invisible. He has no power. So this is very much an idea that a divine right king would not want, because the divine right king says, God gives me the power, but this guy says it's the people's right and asking of me to rule for them that gives me my power. Something we are going to see this unit, because we're going to see kings that are going to be challenged on different fronts for their power and authority. That's it for 4.1. We'll go 4.2 Western Europe, 4.3 Eastern Europe, 4.4 Russia, and then 4.5 we'll head to England and talk about how that system of government is totally different and something that looks kind of familiar. Peace.